Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Obviously I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. You've probably seen it going around. I'm gonna try not to take too long. These are tags, so I'm gonna go for like the quick, fast approach. I don't think I'll like diddle daddle too long. Yeah, this tag was a lot harder than I thought it would be because I could have put like one book for like half of the answers, or like one series for like half of these answers, but I did try to kind of like diversify my answers, so we'll see how I did. If you haven't done this or you don't have a channel, I definitely like recommend trying this out. It's really fun despite like the difficulties. It's very much like catered towards people who read like a lot. I think that's all I have to say before I start the video. Again, I don't want to take too long. So the first question is the best book I've read so far in 2021. I could have put a few books here, but I think I'm gonna go with Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. I've talked about this book a few times on my channel, so I won't go too much in depth, but we basically follow two sisters. One of the sisters is more of our main character, and she's essentially trying to con this family, trying to prove that she's like this long lost relative in order to get to their good graces, get their money, get some of their like social standing. That doesn't really work out, so she kind of gets like into all their political drama, not really expecting to, but she does. I really enjoyed this book. I love the LGBT themes. It's a very like non-heteronormative world. The political intrigue is really good. We also have a really interesting like vigilante character. Didn't see that coming, but there's one. I read this as an arc earlier in the year, and I still like think about it like a lot. So the next question is best sequel I've read so far. I'm trying to focus more on sequels, and they've generally been like good because I wouldn't continue a series if I didn't like it. But I'm gonna go with the Kingfountain books that I read earlier in the year by Jeff Wheeler. I used to talk about Jeff Wheeler a lot on my channel. I haven't because I haven't read his books lately, but I think he does really good like standard European inspired fantasy. Also does like King Arthur inspired fantasy a lot. Specifically his Kingfountain series is very like King Arthur elements. So Jeff Wheeler, Tamora Pierce, and another author I'm going to talk about later on this list definitely fit like my kind of perfect fantasy that's like catered to like me. I pretty much really adored everything that Jeff Wheeler has written. There's like one book that I didn't love, but that's because we already knew what was going to happen to said characters, so I was kind of like whatever about it. But for the most part, I would give like each of his books like 4.5 stars. So the next question is newest release you haven't read but want to. So I don't typically pay attention to new releases. I like to read backlog books much more than new releases. I very rarely buy books at like store price because it's expensive, and I like to buy from my used bookstore. So unless my used bookstore already has used new releases, I won't read them. But I guess two books that could qualify for this question would be Trial of Sorcerers by Elize Kova. This is part of her like Air Awakens universe, which I really enjoyed. Air Awakens, I know it's not everyone's like a cup of tea. I really enjoyed that series. Didn't enjoy the sequel series, but this new series, Trial of Sorcerers, takes place in the same universe, so obviously I'm interested in that. I think it came out in like March or April. And the other book that I'm really interested in, still haven't picked it up, is Firekeeper's Daughter. I've heard so many great things. I heard it's like really good like YA contemporary mystery thriller that kind of touches on a lot of topics, but I'm really interested in reading it. It sounds fantastic. So the next question is the most anticipated release of 2021, but again, I don't pay attention too much to releases. The one book that hasn't been released that has really caught my eye is Iron Widow by Zhao. So the author is actually a content creator here on YouTube as well. They usually talk about or critique, evaluate Chinese inspired media, so like things like the Mulan live action, the Mulan animated film. They've talked about Avatar, they've talked about Kung Fu Panda, and I've loved their content, and they have been talking about their new release in their videos, so I got really excited. So Iron Widow is supposed to be Pacific Rim, which I love. Pacific Rim meets The Handmaid's Tale, and in Iron Widow we're supposed to follow a kind of reimagining, retelling of Wu Zetian, who was the only female emperor of China. So all that sounds really interesting and different. That pretty much kind of drew my attention to this book, and that's why I'm pretty hyped about it. Also just love the author's content here on YouTube. So the next question is the biggest disappointment of the year. So I don't usually have too many expectations for books that I pick up because that really can dampen, you know, your review or your feelings about a book. So I like to go in pretty blind, but I guess it would probably be this Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. You've probably already heard that Victoria Schwab has really good concepts, but they're not executed well. That's pretty much what happened with this book. There were a lot of elements that I enjoyed, but for the most part, her execution, specifically with her characters, her female characters, aren't my favorite. I don't like some of the female characters she's written in the past. They're very frustrating to me. So the next question is the biggest surprise of 2021, and I would go with the Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kate Adams. So this is a adult contemporary romance, which I typically don't read. So I guess the reason why I was surprised by this book was because when I pick up a romance, I know that I'm just there for like a good time. You know, I expect 3 stars. And like that's it. Like I don't expect like to really connect with the characters or to really be invested in a romance. So I guess the biggest surprise of this book was how well the author showed the conflicts within this relationship. This is a kind of second chance romance. The romance in this story follows 2 people who are married and they're kind of falling out of love. They're not really living together at the beginning of the book. They have problems, and I really like how the author wrote out these problems. The author did really well at taking miscommunication and like making that a kind of valid reason why these characters aren't really loving each other at this moment. Miscommunication is probably one of my least favorite tropes in romance. If you read romance, you probably don't like miscommunication as well, but I think the author made the miscommunication in this romance like understandable and like valid, and it doesn't seem like it came out of nowhere. That could be resolved in like a 5-minute conversation. And I was also really invested in their relationship. I really wanted it to work out, which I don't typically find. I'll enjoy romance or I won't, but I won't ever get invested one way or another. I haven't heard that the companion books are like as good, but I was fine reading this first one and I really enjoyed it for someone who isn't a huge contemporary romance reader. So the next question is new favorite author or new to you author, and I'm gonna go with Cinda Williams Chima. So she has a few series. I've only started reading her 7 Realms series and I've been enjoying it so much. I mentioned this earlier in the video, but Jeff Wheeler, Tamora Pierce, and Cinda Williams Chima pretty much write the fantasy that's like most exciting for me, and that's that political intrigue type of story. I really fell in love with her first book in the 7 Realms series. I totally like binged the second book, absorbed the 3rd book, and I'm really anxious to finish the series. I have heard that her Shattered Realms series, like the follow-up series, is not as good, but I'm still optimistic. The next question is newest fictional crush. So I don't get crushes anymore, not since like my Twilight era. I don't like hang posters or character art on my wall. Like I'm not like obsessed with like individual characters, and I read a lot of YA, and so I don't feel comfortable crushing on like YA characters. I'm 25, so that would be weird. But I guess that the one character that could fit this criteria would be Vargo from Mask of Mirrors. I've already talked about Mask of Mirrors earlier in the video. So Vargo is that kind of like tall, handsome character in the shadows who you don't really know what his agenda is, but he seems really charming. His character was basically like a crime lord, and he's trying to like go legitimate, trying to like be part of like the upper class, though everyone kind of knows that he was like not the most ethical person, right? He was a crime lord. So really interesting character. I guess he kind of fits like the bad boy trope, but he's a little bit more realized, while at the same time the authors are kind of like holding back on his like information, his like backstory, to kind of keep us intrigued. So the next question is newest favorite character. Again, I don't get super attached to characters. I like seeing them in the moment in their books, but for the most part I don't find myself getting too attached. But I think maybe Han and Ryza are pretty good characters that I'm really invested in, like in their stories. They're from the 7 Realms series by Cinda Williams Chima, which I've talked about at length in like the past few videos. I did read the 6 of Crows duology earlier this year to like prep for the Netflix show, and I would say like the Crows as like a group is like really good. I definitely agree that her character work there was like really good. The next question is a book that made me cry. So if you saw like my birthday vlog, you would have seen that I cried reading The Sweet Far Thing by Libba Bray. So I pretty much read the last 200 pages over like my birthday weekend. I guess the thing that really made me cry about this book is like, despite that we are following a group of young girls that are kind of unlikable, we still feel so much pain and like sorrow for them, because this being set in the Victorian era, their lives are pretty much predetermined for them, like whether, like who they're gonna marry, what they're gonna do with their lives, and none of them want what is expected of them, and they have to like fight tooth and nail, and they have to go through so much trauma to like get away, if they can, from their like predetermined future. They really want that independence that is not really given to these young women, any young women at the time. So it was pretty sad. The ending kind of, the ending completely ruined me, to be honest. That being said, I do tend to just cry a lot reading books. Fiction is like how I let my emotions out. In real life, I'm not super emotional, but when I read, that's when I get emotional. So the next question is a book that made me happy. Most of the books that I read are to like give me enjoyment and excitement and escapism. So on some level, every book kind of makes me happy, but I would say probably The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. So this is a book written in verse, and we follow a young boy who's half Greek Cyprian, half Afro-Caribbean. I'm not super sure like what specific island, but he's definitely half Afro-Caribbean, and we basically follow his life from a very young age up until he goes off to college. And while he does deal with like prejudices and things like that, he's also a young gay man. This book pretty much ends like on a very like happy, heartwarming, kind of uplifting note. I mean, throughout the book it has a very like hopeful tone, a very hopeful message. I don't want to give too much away, but this character that we follow, that's kind of based off the author's experiences. It's not super like autobiographical, but there are similarities there. This character that we follow finds their place in the world, and you know, it's very much like a queer, like happy story as opposed to like queer trauma. So if you're looking for something like that, I would definitely recommend it. Again, I listened to it on audiobook, and the author obviously knows how to tell his story. So the next question is the most beautiful book that I've received or bought this year. So I haven't been buying a lot of physical books. I've also been borrowing a lot of books from my library and Kindle Unlimited, so I don't own any of those. But I guess looking through my shelves, I have a few things. So some pretty books that I got were The Bone Witch by Chupeco. It has really pretty like gold, like filigree or whatever this is called. I got a copy of Mansfield Park earlier this year by Jane Austen. So this is from Arcturus Publishing. I have a few books in these editions. I recently got a copy of Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. Also, of course, really pretty. I also got The School of Good and Evil, The Last Ever After. This is the third book in the series. Middle grade fantasy pretty much knocks it out of the park a lot of the times, and I wish that YA and like adult fantasy would like get into this like giant, like epic kind of art style where it's like very detailed. Those are pretty much the prettiest books I got. Again, don't really cover buy and haven't been buying in general. So, and the last question is books that you need to read by the end of the year. I'm mostly trying to finish up series that I can, so like any series that I've started I would like to finish. I'm sure I did like a goals video at some point. I don't remember. I'm sure I did, and I don't think I've like really been attempting any of my goals. I've mostly just been reading fantasy, which is fine. I just want to have like a good time, maybe get some more chunky books out of the way. I have tons of like big tomes that I haven't touched, and maybe pick up some more horror books as well, since I have enjoyed what I've attempted to read in the past. So I think that's it. I've seen a few of these videos, and sometimes questions are different, so let me know if like I missed a question. I'll like answer in the comments, but for the most part I think I got like the standard ones. I'll link the creator down below. I'd love to hear anything that you have to say in the comments down below. Feel free to like, comment, or subscribe, or do none of that. It's all cool with me. I will link all my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.